Full Service Radio is proudly supported and hosted by Simplecast, the easiest way for a podcast creator to publish and distribute audio on the internet. For more information, visit simplecast.com.
You're tuned into Full Service Radio.
Full Service Radio.
Full Service.
Full Service. Full Service.
Full Service Radio.
Peace, everyone, and welcome to the Edible Activist Podcast. I'm your host, Melissa L. Jones, broadcasting live from the lobby of the Line, D.C. This podcast is where dynamic people of color in the food and agriculture space share their personal food journeys, passions, and perspectives that stem from the land, all exemplifying the spirit of activism in their own edible way. Let's get started. All right. Happy Wednesday, everyone, and welcome to the Edible Activist Podcast. Today on the show, I have a really awesome guest who has decided to join me. Christopher Bradshaw of Dreaming Out Loud. So he is the founder and executive director of DC-based Dreaming Out Loud and is a social justice entrepreneur whose expertise is using social innovation through the food system to grow meaningful community economic development within marginalized communities. His organization, Dreaming Out Loud, is dedicated to rebuilding urban, community-based systems through social enterprise, helping to increase access to healthy food and improve community health, develop low-income entrepreneurs and cooperatives, and train at-risk adult residents for sustainable, family-supporting wages. That was a lot.
Yeah.
Y'all do a lot.
We do. We're trying to refine what we do.
I know.
There's a lot that's wrong, but, we don't want to take on every issue and every challenge, but we do want to do things in a way that's kind of synergistic and helps us get at some solutions to some challenges in the neighborhood.
Absolutely. Well, I'm always interested in hearing Chris's perspectives. And we have this ongoing joke because I'm always telling him to log off the internet. Because when he's passionate about a subject, he goes in. And I'm like scrolling down Facebook like, Chris, log off. Yeah. He's like, why? And really, I'm joking because I really do appreciate him being in food and politics and in D.C. He's had his organization for the last 10 years, which wasn't initially centered around food, right?
Yeah.
And so we're going to dive into that a bit. And so just to give our listeners a rundown of what they can expect from the show, definitely want to have you define what a food system is, because we use that word a lot. A lot of people in food knows what that is, but definitely in regards to the work that you do, I want you to break down that definition for those who may not know. You know, this may be new to some folks. We're going to learn about your personal journey, which is really interesting. I've heard you tell this story a few times, especially about your family lineage, which is just so heart-wrenching to me, and I'm sure it impacts a lot of the work that you do to this day. And we're going to understand the systematic structures that affect food and people in these communities. You mentioned refinement, and there's a lot going down in the city, and you're part of it all. So, and then we're going to understand what overall success looks like for those you serve, because you guys have some hard goals and some missions out there. And so I know just what success looks like for Dreaming Out Loud, because you guys do a lot of work in the community, from a systematic, standpoint to a political, you're all involved. So let's start off. How do you define a food system?
So the food system is a set of relationships that interact along a continuum of how your food gets from being grown in the field or wherever food may be grown, or in a petri dish these days, who knows, to get to your plate. And those relationships are between a lot of different factors: farmers, people who distribute food, folks who eat food, folks who process food, workers, owners, and how those relationships end up delivering a product or a service to the end user, to you who might be listening out there today.
So, is our food system still jacked?
It's very jacked. There are a lot of different ways in which it's jacked. You can't really point to one specific way. I mean, but there's any number of challenges, from the way that land is distributed and owned to the way that profits are distributed across the food system, labor issues, safety issues. There's a lot of different things. Equity as it relates to race, gender, class, and its connections to history.
Yes.
There's a lot of things tied up in the food system that are some of the deepest challenges that not only this country faces, but the world faces. And there are powers that don't want to let go of their privilege and their power to continue to benefit above and beyond folks, not just folks who are also benefiting, but those who are destitute or indigent or under-resourced. That there's this notion that our current economic system, capitalism, works for everyone, or works at all, or works beneficially. And so for us, it's about having those conversations in the neighborhood, in the community, but also being a bigger voice about those issues, and speaking truth to power, no matter where, power accumulates itself, whether it's on the ground in the grassroots or, down the street in Congress.
That's what's up. So when you started Dreaming Out Loud, about 10 years ago, right?
Yep.
10 years ago. And I forgot to mention that, Chris is a Howard alum,
Just out here winning Best Picture.
Okay.
Saw Chadwick last night winning Best Pictures, and
I gotta give
respect
when it's due. I know how Howard alums do.
Mecca the capstone.
Oh
Sorry.
gosh, just stop. Stop.
I'll chill out.
So, and originally from Tennessee, right?
Yep, I'm from Morristown, Tennessee. It's a little small town, about 50,000 people, east of Knoxville, Tennessee. Okay. And I grew up in Nashville.
Okay. So he came to D.C. to attend Howard University, and he's been here ever since. So as you and everybody else knows, the landscape of D.C. has changed tremendously. And I was actually cracking up the other day because I think you actually posted, it was probably a post of a post when they were doing those like 10-year challenges. It was like U Street 10 years ago.
Yeah, it was 14th Street.
Right,
14th Street 10 years ago. Yep.
Gosh, I miss Republic Gardens. Anyway, so when you started Dreaming Out Loud 10 years ago, it wasn't even food wasn't even really part of the conversation. It was, you were more centered on the economic, I think, and tell me if I'm wrong, like there were some system issues that didn't involve food, but it was more economic system issues.
Well, it was more about, we called ourselves doing character and leadership development.
Okay.
And so we wanted to utilize art, media, and the environment to help youth take a look at the world around them in a different way.
Okay.
And that included, economics, the environment, environmental racism, a lot of different issues. Mm-hmm. And we used Adinkra symbols from Ghana to kind of take a look at those issues.
Mm-hmm. I saw that.
Explore. But once we got to work, we started noticing a lot of issues around food in ways that were impediments to some of the things we thought we were going to be able to accomplish. So, working inside charter schools, which you can have your opinion about the direction of charters and whether or not they're the solution or part of the solution, but we were in one because they were there, and the kids were there. The challenges were there. You could see the lack of access to early childhood education bearing down on the kids. You could see the impact of generational poverty. But one of the places that you could see that play out most prominently was through food. Being at a charter school that was, I would say, relatively under-resourced as it relates to, some of the others. And, they had snacks for the kids that they bring around. The snack lady would come with Teddy Grahams and Kool-Aid. And so you can imagine trying to start an after-school or summer program around, character development. And you're talking about eating healthy, and you're talking about, developing the study skills and these
and
other
the
kinds
kids
of
are
things.
flying through the roof.
Yeah, exactly. You can, you have a room full of 20 third graders and you just give them all the sugar in the world. Well, I mean, there goes your lesson. They're going to be throwing the crayons.
Exactly.
Like, it doesn't matter. So, we started trying to find healthier snacks and seeing what we could do on that, like, kind of small way to be impactful. Then in the summertime rolled around, we did the Summer Youth Employment Program. So we were working with Groundwork DC, and we were hosting 72 youth between 18 and 24 from 3 different spaces in Ward 7, a church, a community center, and another charter school. And so we noticed kind of the evolution of the food issue from those elementary school kids to the teenagers. So the teenagers would come with, like honey buns and Arizona iced tea for breakfast or some potato chips.
Good Lord.
Yeah, but, we're working to help maintain trails and national parks or in Fort DuPont and Fort Mahan. And DC summertime during the SYEP program, it's going to be 90-something degrees by the time.
I just feel hot when you're talking about that and sweating.
So, if you've just had a breakfast that consists of sugar and salt, you're not going to be doing too well.
Forget about it.
Yeah,
exactly.
So, but when we were walking around in the neighborhood, there were no healthy options, and so it became a question of you can't ignore the problem.
Right.
What do you do? Like, I already tried the healthy snack thing. That didn't work. So I started thinking about other ways, and my mother had gone to a church, and they had like kind of a little market there, and she was like, you should start a farmer's market. I was like, yeah, you know what? I'm going to try that, And then, she had met the guy who was managing the market and connected us, and I'm like, yeah, I'm trying to start a farmer's market. Let's go. And that's how we got started in food. We had a asset-based approach even back then, and trying to look at what exists in the neighborhood to be impactful for the community. Mm-hmm. So we started at a church, and
here you are.
Here we are 10 years later, and now we're trying to do some bigger picture work and working on systems that can kind of help to connect some of the dots and bridge some of the gaps so that we can see more bigger picture solutions happen.
Absolutely. And I definitely want to get more into that in the latter part of the show, more about your work and, again, what success looks like for Dreaming Out Loud. So for those who are just tuning in, this is Melissa L. Jones here with the Edible Activist Podcast, broadcasting live here from the lobby of the Line DC. I am chatting with Christopher Bradshaw of Dreaming Out Loud. Thank you for joining me. And I just had him. He does a lot of his organization actually does a lot of food system work, and it's actually deeper than that. So, and it's, as he's defined it, as a set of relationships and, the sourcing of the food and just everything being connected, like everything is a system. Our food is a system, and just working to fix that, from so many different levels. And Chris is from Morristown, Tennessee, about 50,000 folks there. If you not so small. If you blink, you miss it, right?
No, we got a couple stoplights.
Okay. You got a couple stoplights.
Got a mall.
You got
got some things. Morristown's a nice place to raise some kids. I love Morristown, East Tennessee.
I got love for the South.
423.
And you're so crazy. I bring that up because I like to say these are all conversations that stem from the land. And I'm a firm believer that a lot of our issues are ones that still stem from the land. They're generational, and you can debate me on it all day. Nobody has fought me about it thus far. And so you have a very interesting family story from your lineage that I definitely want you to share with the audience.
Yeah, definitely. So, I'm Southern. I love being Southern. I come
Me
from
too.
It's a beautiful thing. The South is challenged, as we know, but as Malcolm said, as long as you're south of the Canadian border, you got challenges. But anyway, my family is very large, especially on my grandfather's side. The Welleses. So we are happily descended from my great-great-grandparents, George Wells, and my first great-great-grandmother, Sarah, who he married. And he and Sarah had 14 kids.
Woo.
Yeah, 14 kids. But unfortunately, she passed away, and he remarried my great-great-grandmother, Annie. And they had 17 children. So
17 in addition to the 14 that...
Yeah. So 17 plus 14 is 31. So 31 children descended from these three folks in my family. And they were in Georgia, actually. Valdosta, down in that area. Our family is really great in that we have family reunions every 2 years.
They do, and they do it big.
Yeah, it rotates regions. So, we have the Northeast, we have the Southeast, and the West. So, 2017, my family reunion was in Seattle. So we're that far away.
Wow.
2015, it was in Valdosta, Georgia. And this year, 2019, it'll be in St. Simon's Island, Georgia.
Oh, okay.
So you can see how far we are spread out. But the key there is the Georgia roots. But we take very seriously like the tracking of the family history. And we have a cousin Gail from Seattle who's really like the historian who has gathered lots of documents, birth records, all sorts of things that keep track of the family history. And one of the unique things that we learned over the course of doing the research is that part of our family came from, we still have a lot of folks in Florida, but for those of you all who know about Rosewood, Florida, know that history there. Rosewood was a black town that popped up and was centered around, I think it was like a turpentine plant or something. That was one of the industries that was there. But then as you have this one industry, others grow up and you have, farms, you have stores, and you have other things that come and development comes. But you have this town that begins to develop and you have a very hostile environment in Florida and the Deep South. And you have jealousies that come up. You start to have folks that are flourishing and you have a community that's growing, and folks often would use would come up with a false incident or circumstance because white folks would get jealous of...
What year was this, just to reference?
This is like 1920... Shoot, let me...
You don't have to know the exact, because I just want to make sure our listeners know what era we're referencing. Not that some of these issues aren't present to this day, but this is really interesting.
So anyway, so the situation there was that a white woman accused a black man of raping her. And so that had been proven to be false. And again, the larger point was that the underlying issues were likely the jealousy of the prosperity or in development of that community.
Right.
So, using this lie, this false pretext, they then formed a large mob and then burned the town to the ground and killed lots of people. But some folks were able to escape. And the story goes that some folks got word that the Klan was coming, that this mob was coming, and they left dinner, hot on the stove and ran and escaped through the swamp. So part of, how portion of my family, folks came from Rosewood and settled in Valdosta area somehow.
Wow.
So, yeah.
How big or small was Rosewood? Do you know?
It was a few hundred people. It wasn't, or a few thousand. It wasn't a large city.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. And then is it documented and reported that some of the families or some of the individuals who perished were indeed related to, was part of your lineage?
We don't totally know. We know that the one family connection that was surviving, I don't know about the ones that perished. The one that was surviving was related to who was accused. I believe it was related to who was accused.
Oh my gosh.
So, I think it was 1922. I don't know, I had 28 in my mind, but they said death toll as high as 150.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah, that's a not uncommon story,
right? Right.
And part of the reason why, I mean, they were farming in Rosewood and then in Georgia as well, and that was part of the reason why there was such a large family, because you were replacing labor.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Wow. The first time I heard you share that story, it was actually might have been like 3 or 4 years ago. Mm-hmm. And I actually didn't know you at this point. This was when a charter school, we were talking of charter school. It was a charter school over in Tacoma, D.C. Remember, they were doing their annual Youth Justice Summit.
Capital City
Charter,
mm-hmm.
Yes. And I was actually helping them at that time to orchestrate their very first Food Justice Summit. And I remember you sharing that. They actually invited you in as a speaker, and you shared that story. Did you tear up when you shared that? Do you ever tear up when you share? And I remember, and I just remember like clenching just holding my chest. Like,
yeah.
Again, it's not an uncommon story, but it's so crazy how you can hear those stories again and again, and it's almost like it just happened.
Yeah. I mean, it did just happen.
It did, but it's like.
So, my great-great-grandfather, George Wells, who was born into enslavement, I mean, my Aunt Eloise is still with us, thankfully.
Yeah.
So, her father was born into enslavement. So, yeah, it did just happen.
Yeah. Because you could physically touch her.
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
So they would have been hearing those, hearing about it, or other lynchings and that sort of thing. So.
Okay. Wow. Well, thank you for sharing that again. This is Melissa L. Jones here with the Edible Activist Podcast. For those who are just tuning in, I've been chatting here with Chris Bradshaw of Dreaming Out Loud, which is a DC-based organization that does food systems work here in the DC area. And for those who have been tuning in, thank you. Appreciate it. So we're actually going to take a really quick break, and we will be back in a few moments. You're listening to Perfect Day, produced by Artist Authentic. For more of Authentic's work, visit allornothingstudios.com. Hey there, everyone. Happy Wednesday again. This is Melissa L. Jones here with the Edible Activist Podcast. I am broadcasting live from the lobby of the Line DC, and I have the wonderful pleasure of chatting it up with Christopher Bradshaw of Dreaming Out Loud. What up, Chris?
What's going on?
You having fun with me here?
I love it. It's great. I appreciate
you. So the first half, I don't know if it was really the first half, but before we took the break, I had him define food systems for me because it's a large part of what Dreaming Out Loud does, and a lot of food politics here in DC, all in it. And so for those who don't know what a food system is, I mean, they're trying to fix it, and I asked Chris, I said, is it still jacked up? And he said yes.
Yeah, so on the ground and the way it impacts, Black folks' lives here in D.C., we're trying to do what we can to bridge some gaps so that there's some community-based solutions. Big picture, there's some forces that are beyond us to fix. And those are,
You can't see him, but he sat up straight and gave me this look.
Global corporations that control parts of our food system. Yep. Folks that use their power to make sure that they always win and benefit. Folks who obtain their land or their wealth through ill means and ain't giving up an inch,
Yeah.
And it's where their liberty and freedom and justice is attacked to even discuss repairing the damage from what they benefit from. So,
the other thing that Chris shared with me as well and with our listeners is his family story of, Rosewood, Florida. And so thank you for sharing that. I definitely wanted you to tell those words again. Again, I've heard you share that history with me before, and actually in front of a crowd. And I, again, as I said earlier in the show, I feel like a lot of our issues stem from the land, and it's a lot of generational trauma, and having to flee and we died and, we fought, and it's just some of the same issues that we face this, till this day. And so a lot of what Dreaming Out Loud does, when it comes to being in the community with the farmers market, growing in the community, providing economic opportunity, not just for the residents, but also for food entrepreneurs too, to me, and this is how I feel, this is Melissa's opinion, perspective, they're all issues that still stem from the land. I don't care. Mm-hmm. Again, you can debate me all day about it. So my question for you, Chris, is what are some of the redundancies in language that you are so sick of hearing when it comes to food politics?
I would say one is the community.
Yeah. You don't like build community?
I mean, what is the community? Can you give me the community's email address or the phone number for the community? As if it's a monolithic thing, as if it is one person, as if it is one opinion, as if it is one circumstance. I think that's where we fall short in being able to address nuances, and to properly define what forces have impacted a certain segment of the community or the broader community. I think we have to parse out things a little bit more. So just for instance, in starting the farm at Kelly Miller, some people could be for the farm, some people could be against the farm. Mm-hmm. You could easily say the community doesn't want the farm. That might be three ladies, literally.
Who is the community?
The community, wait, you mean you three? Or the broader set of...
And Chris is giving you a real live example.
And that's what's real. I talked to 20, 30 people that were like, oh yeah, great idea. And then 3 people can be like, I don't like it. And they're the community. Or, in DC, we talk about ownership and community ownership. And there's a lot of different layers and levels to that. We are the primary operator at the farm at Kelly Miller. And we had an extensive community engagement process. We engage the school community, which has a different set of thoughts and ideas and desires.
So is it that we're not
the
really
neighborhood
defining who the community is, or we're just kind of tossing the word?
We just toss the word, and that there are different pieces and parts to a community.
Right.
There's a Black farmer community in DC. There is there's a faith community in the neighborhood and the community, in the broader community. So, I just want us to have more conversations about what you mean specifically when you say the community and who something is going to benefit, or the challenges in addressing a specific segment of the community. For us, if want a workforce development program that could find and work with people who have the deepest barriers to employment. Right. That's a specific segment of the community that have different injuries, whether it be physical, psychosocial, economic, or what have you, that have occurred as a result of this system, this set of systems, whether they've been incarcerated, they've been under-resourced, undereducated, right? So what in a specific segment of the community does that group need, right?
And you're spot on.
Yeah, it's
because you can read any piece of language, the community.
Yeah.
Build the community.
Yeah.
Community support.
Right.
Stems from the community.
Yeah.
Well, who are you talking about?
Exactly. Who are you talking about?
And essentially, we need to define the segments. As you said, we need to really know who the community is.
Yeah.
And be more specific about who it is we're trying to serve and who's against this. And
yeah. We have folks in the community who are, again, the community, who are against everything and anything and who wield power. But because they're their community, do we then not address those folks and be unafraid to speak truth to that center of power? If that person in the community has some level or measure of power relative to some of the other folks that aren't in their positions, whether elected or anointed or what have you.
Did you say anointed? Shut the hell up. I'm ending this show.
It's true. So I mean, it's difficult, and we have to have more conversations about getting to the why of certain circumstances and how long things take. And nobody has a magic wand.
Exactly. I mean, you started this organization 10 years ago, and I'm sure it gets more challenging day by day.
Yeah,
it has to. I mean, because the landscape of DC has changed so much. So with some of the projects that you have going on, some of the initiatives that you have going on, so if you guys haven't been to the farm at Kelly Miller in Northeast, it is, first of all, beautiful. Oh my gosh, I went during this past summer and it is just gorgeous.
Yeah.
Okay. I wanted to just sideswipe some Swiss chard just for the hell of it. It is awesome. So I definitely want to talk about, who you're serving and, the projects that you have going on around the farm at Kelly Miller, and also the awesome program that I had a privilege of being a part of is the food entrepreneur program that you guys your first one, your inaugural one over this last year. And so just talk a bit about like who you're serving and with those two initiatives that you have going on.
Yeah. So we do have who we're serving. So, again, talking about different segments of the community. And it's interesting being where we're positioned because we are serving different community, different aspects, different segments that have different needs. So we are behind a school, right? So you can't ignore the fact that you have nearly 400 children and their families inside of the school. So being able to connect the school with the farm and to other educational programming is a priority. We help to rebuild the school garden. We do nutrition education and connecting them to, the African American heritage foodways that may or may not be still connected for them. We do that inside the school. We work with partners at the farm at Kelly Miller to do different things. City Blossoms to have open hours and connect with other youth in the neighborhood and the community. The Green Scheme, good friends of ours who've,
shout out Green Scheme.
Yeah, bring students and youth to the farm. Beach Street Gardens, who's tasked with working with seniors and connecting with seniors and kind of doing some bridging of the gaps in terms of intergenerational work. And then, we work in a collaborative fashion, so you'll hear us say a lot of different orgs and a lot of different people because nobody can solve all of these big things at once.
Right.
We do work around community economic development through food, so that's a part of what we do. Maisha Taylor runs our entrepreneurship program called Dream. You mentioned that the farm was really beautiful, and that's, Violet King is an amazing farm manager.
She is.
And a freedom fighter herself. So, we work with entrepreneurs. We had our first cohort, and Dream is called Dreaming Out Loud's Ready for Entrepreneurship Accelerator modules. So we had 10 participants, 90% women, 1 returning citizen, all from Ward 7 and Ward 8, again, from the community,
right?
Right? Who have some particular needs as business owners and or cooperative members as this kind of work takes place, and we help to get them a foothold and opportunities, and which is really important to find those folks who have that spark. But
right,
we have to be careful about idealizing entrepreneurship or business being a solution to every problem,
right.
That are really systemic challenges, or going back to that, those social justice questions of how wealth was built in America around chattel slavery and dispossessing Native Americans of their land and that genocide.
Hello.
So while we do this work and working on a workforce development program to be able to go deeper with folks in the neighborhood who have faced unemployment and disconnection from the skills needed to retain employment in the food system. Mm-hmm. That's kind of another subset of the community, right? That we've
community.
Yeah, integrated into the farm space. Right?
I should have told everyone that is going to be a key word too, in addition to food systems. So I was on your website the other day, and I really like this statement where it says, Dreaming Out Loud believes that all communities deserve equal access to fresh, healthy food choices. We envision a world in which individuals and communities are empowered to dream out loud. So that's where this is all coming from, guys. Meaning they have the space to think, to imagine, and to will their innermost dreams into vibrant reality. We envision resilient communities with equitable economic opportunity, family supporting wages, high quality education for all, in a healthy environment.
Yeah, that's lofty vision. I mean, but the practical steps day to day are what we also have to focus on. So we keep those those big ideas alive and as a part of what drives us, but a lot of it is also just nuts and bolts, hands in the dirt.
Yep.
Working.
Literally.
Yeah.
Literally. So before we wrap up, I definitely want to ask this question because it is part of the work that you do, and I'm sure part of the challenges that you all face within, in the city in general. So gentrification. Mm-hmm.
Colonization,
displacement. Absolutely. Displacement.
Economic violence.
The list can go on. How has those issues, those realities impacted the mission work that you all have done? And I ask that in a sense of, how has it just totally thrown off the mission? Because I just feel like not a sense of like deviated from it, but it's happening so rapidly in a city that used to be more chocolate city, and it's almost kind of, I don't know if we're neck and neck right now, but we're close.
The black population in DC is still in the 40s. It's something like 44, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Last looked at.
How is this impacting Dreaming Out Loud's mission, if at all? Because you're working with
it impacts
the
us a lot.
Black community.
Yeah, exactly. We are working with the Black community and in the Black community and for the Black community. So, as you watch these changes take place, first of all, it makes you really again be cognizant of how much public policy plays into the work. And that your work is not just to figure out how to grow some fruits and vegetables and how to get them somewhere. Your work is how to organize folks around food to advocate for the things that, first off, allow the community to just be and stay and have place. And so you are also reminded of how these events and circumstances are historical cycles. And so some of the things you may be fighting, you start to wonder if it's inevitable. And you have those thoughts of, well, why am I fighting? Why not just give in? Why not just kind of get my little piece of something? Is this work really worth it? And I'm not the only one. I've talked to other folks at CDFIs and other nonprofits and other social enterprises and other activists and other organizers.
Something similar to that when I saw you when we sat down, just like, you know, in what I'm doing, does it count? We know it counts, but, and those are, I don't knock anybody for asking those questions. Yeah. Because it's, you know, we get up each and every morning to work very hard at our mission. And sometimes, I don't know, some days I feel like I'm knocked down. Yeah. You know? Yep. Because I'm sorry. Actually, sorry, not sorry. You know, maybe this is kind of off topic, but not really. You know, white privilege exists. Yeah. And it's something that I personally have just been struggling a lot with when it comes to the work that I do in many ways, in some very deep ways, you know, in food. In food.
Yeah. I mean, white supremacy is the most violent force that has ever swept the planet. Absolutely. It is the ism that has birthed its own, other isms. And even if they were predating, you know, the period of this period of white supremacy spreading across the globe, they weren't anything compared to what the ways that this system has worked to entrench itself, and as violent as this system has been and what it's produced. And you kind of, it's grown both as a result of and fueled by capitalism as an economic system. It's devalued everything that actually is of value. It's flipped the notion of value on its head. So, you know, what you can extract from the earth is better than preserving the earth. So there's one that you can actually live on. Our labor, notions of race and gender and class, all of those things are tied up in this work.
Well, on that note, really quickly for me, what does success look like for Dreaming Out Loud and the folks you serve?
Yeah, I think that for us, there's layers and levels of success. You know, I would say big picture, lofty goals, success, change the world, redistribute the land, you know, redistribute.
I was going to say, I want everybody to have land. I want all of us to have land.
Schools are funded. Teachers are, you know, making the wages of all of those things. The environment's clean. People have healthy food. That looks like success. But another part of the work is just day to day, the way that we interact on the ground with folks and for folks, repairing individually each one of us. Oh, yes, that's Chris. A really important thing, and that comes in casting a new gaze on things that you might not have had the spectacles to view before. So even like my family story, for me, part of the work is to not just say, "Oh, great, they had a lot of kids, and that sounds cute," or "Yeah, man, that George Wells, he's putting in work over there." Like that's all. Be proud of your family story. You can joke about those things, but for me, it's like, okay, did my great-great-grandmother Annie and Sarah have choices? Right. Exactly. What was it like for them to be pregnant for their entire lives, and be primarily probably tasked with those raising those children. What were their dreams? And then what does having the opportunity to have the conversations with myself and with my family and in spaces that I happen to be able to occupy, what are the shifts and the changes that are needed so that, this generation of Sarah and Annie have the choices to shape their own future in a way. And how does that connect to conversations that are taking place on the ground that people might be afraid of or might deride in some instances or make fun of? And how do I use the work that we do to engage folks in that conversation?
Wow, that was touching. You make me want to go to Mississippi tomorrow and just sit next to Big Ma and Grandma and just spill all. I have conversation.
Fish back.
And bring. I owe Chris some fried perch and brems. Okay, spelled breams but brems. Well, Chris, thank you again for joining me. Where can people find you on social media?
Dreaming Out Loud is at DOLDC across all platforms: Instagram, Facebook, Twitter at DOLDC. And me, I'm Abram's grandson. That's my grandfather on Twitter and Instagram.
Watch out for his rants, y'all. All right, Chris. So we're going to do a really quick rapid fire to close out. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
He's not ready because he didn't even read my emails. So he didn't even know what I'm going to ask. Okay, so Chris, what is your favorite leafy green?
I already knew it was coming. What's your favorite leafy green? I don't know. Arugula.
I don't know
spicy and tangy.
No, I'm joking. I like arugula too. Sweet, spicy, sour, or salty?
Oh, salty.
Salty, really?
Yeah.
You know what? I think that's a first since I've been doing these interviews. Okay. Favorite fruit?
I like pears.
Okay. I can dig it. Okay, so this is going to be funny. What's cooking in your pot these days? Literally.
I made chicken and rice soup last week. It was really good. To save myself some time, I bought one of those ready-made rotisserie chickens. You know how you get to a certain point, you're like, I don't want to pick all this meat off this bone, so I threw the whole carcass in there with some celery and carrots and mushrooms.
I'm done.
And thyme and oregano and salt and pepper.
I'm not mad. That actually sounds delicious.
That joint was great.
You cheated a bit, but I'm not mad. Because I didn't expect anything, and that's trifling. That's trifling. I don't know, Chris. You be out in these streets. Okay, so one way someone can channel their inner edible activism.
Man, find somewhere in your neighborhood where people are growing food or connecting around these issues, and get involved.
Volunteer at Kelly Miller.
Yeah, come volunteer with us.
I'm gonna be there.
Yeah.
That's what's up. All right. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. We're here live on Full Service Radio every Wednesday at 11 a.m., and you can access each episode after it airs on iTunes or Spotify. You can also catch today's show on fullserviceradio.org, which is also home to 50 really cool podcasters here, guys. So go to fullserviceradio.org and check them all out, from arts, culture, music, you name it. So also be sure to follow me at Food Talks DC on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. If you're an edible activist, please come join me on the show. I would love to feature you. Just shoot me a DM on Instagram and I will get back to you. Thanks and have a wonderful day. Peace.
Appreciate you.